why do a lot of people, when they hear something like self-help or mindset or mentality, mental development, psychology, they kind of put it aside, especially adults, grown-ups. It coming from, I'm a tennis and performance coach, and I play tennis. I play from juniors to professional, and I teach tennis. And when I teach, I implement a lot of the way people think and how it affects the game, which is something that for someone in my position that has done this for so long, it's easy to notice. And there was a time when I'm not saying that I was not open to it, but I guess I just had not been introduced to how much the way you train your mind to think can affect the way your body responds and the way you feel in general in responding. And this is not something that is related to athletes only. This is related to anything, whether it could be at home, it could be at work, in school, it could be in anything. And for quite a while, for a long time, I've been just wondering, say, why is that people are so have so much resistance when you talk to them about their mind? I mean, why is that something so obvious as talking about the mind affecting your performance, and people still resist it, especially adults. It just baffles me that it baffles me that when you when I teach and we start talking about, okay, in many of my lessons there are people that are very obvious that they have technical problems, and you can notice that. I mean, when you already know it, when you have been teaching it for decades, it's just like anything. You notice, you've done it for so long, you notice what's wrong. It's pretty easy to find out when it's something, okay, this is something technical, or there's just something behind the ground strokes, behind the body, behind the technique that is altering or affecting the stroke. And when I find one of the most challenging people to teach is adults, that you find that their emotions, the way they process their emotions, their perceptions, their memories, the way they think is really what's getting on the way to perform in a natural way, which usually when you perform in a natural way is qualified as a good performance. It's like when we watch professional athletes on TV, and they have a good night, or even if they don't have like a particular good night, but they just play at their regular or average level, well, they're just doing naturally what they've been doing for so long. That's why it happens naturally. And after thinking for so long, why is that so? What is there so much resistance about it? I think that I finally, if it's not the reason why, I'm sure this is to me, this is either the reason or a very powerful reason why. And it's the fact that, especially, and it happens, I'm talking a lot about adults here, not only young people, but a lot adults. But I think that in general is because we get used to see, when we see changes in something, we get used to see those changes. They are they happen physically. They It's something that can be seen many times, can be seen and touched. For example, when if you see an athlete that has improved um, his technique, let's say a tennis player improves his forehand, and people analyze it and say, well, this is what they did in his forehand, so it's obvious, the change is obvious, and that's what's taken, that's what has developed or improved his results. Um, so we are used, and we like to see the changes as something that is noticeable to the eye, that is something that we can see, and many times we can touch. So when we think about change, when we think about something that is going to affect your performance in a very drastic way, but it turns out that it's something that cannot really be seen. I mean, you can see players that have developed their game mentally and improved, and one of the best, probably to me the best example, is Andre Agassi, whose career in the beginning was not. Agassi was a performer at first. He was like what to me, Kyrgios is nowadays, or there is this other French guy that he's flashy, and those guys, they're more, they like to show off, and they like to be in the spotlight. They're entertainers. They're not contenders. I believe that they like to be seen. They like to be admired. They like people to look at them and be impressed by their talents and their skills. But it's a very long way, and it's very different living in a world where you just want to impress people and you just want to do okay, because you don't have that way you don't put so much pressure on yourself, and that's what Agassi was. And that's a difference between that and saying, okay, I don't want to be an entertainer anymore. I want to be a contender. I want to be someone that other players will take seriously when they play, like, okay, this guy can beat me today and tomorrow, and this guy can beat this other guy today and tomorrow, and the next week again. Like a real threat, and someone that is looking, that has his eyes on winning the tournament, not just having a good time and entertaining people and making money at the same time. It's a world of different. It's huge, huge responsibility and risk when you say, I want to be an entertainer and I want to be a contender. The entertainer doesn't risk much, because when he loses, well, he wasn't really aiming for too much, so he's okay with it. But the contender, in his mind, is set on winning. So when he loses, he hurts. He really hurts. But most, no, or at least many people that become contenders, they develop their mindset and they grow mentally in order to be able to handle the losses, in order to control their mentality, in order to control the pressure, in order to control when they fail, in order to control the pain of not being able to achieve their goals, weekly goals, which for tennis players, that's how it is. Every week, it's a sport where you're gonna have a lot of mental pressure, because every week of the year you're gonna be, not every week of the year, but consistently you're playing tournaments, and tournaments usually last long 1 week. So you can have 1 week where you do very well, and mentally you're in the place where you want to be, and you think you're ready, and you think that you already transcend the average player zone, and then the next week you go and lose, and you can lose in the first round, and mentally it can put you back where you were 2 weeks ago, or even worse. So it's a sport that is a roller coaster emotionally, if you don't know how to control it. So going back to what I was talking about, people have a resistance to change, have a resistance to matters of the mind because we like to see, we like tangible things, things that we can see, we can touch. And that's when and that's a reason why we like to see players like Nadal. There is a guy that he shows that he's tough mentally and he puts it out there, and that's very attractive. That's the one, that's the mental player that is attractive to watch play because he's showing that he's mentally tough. But when you see a guy like Federer or other players that are tough, but they probably don't, their style of game is not as fancy, or they don't show as much, like Ivan Lendl back in the 80s. You know those guys are tough, but in our minds, we think that, oh, I think Nadal is mentally tougher, but that's because we're seeing it. But then we see Federer and the way he won the Australian Open 2 years ago, coming back on from 2-0 down in a fifth set, and he's showing that, hey, I'm just as strong as Nadal is. The thing is, the way I play doesn't show it, and that's a tangible way. That's example of the things that we like to touch and see, and that's how it makes us believe. If we don't see it, if we don't touch it, if it's not clear there, we don't like to talk about it. We many times we don't think that there is really something to talk about, like it doesn't exist. But it is it's simply because it's more attractive to the eye. So if you're the kind of person that, especially if you're an adult and you think, well, I'm an adult already, I'm mature, I know what I want and I know what I don't want, and I know as an adult, oh, I know what I need. Yeah, and you go and you can probably listen to a talk or a video or something, watch a video or something like that. Oh, I knew I had to do that. Yeah, everybody knows what they have to do. Most people know what they have to do. Even young people, most of them know what they have to do. But not a lot of people take action. Not a lot of people shift their mind. Not a lot of people get serious about saying, okay, you know what? I need to transcend these fears. I need to transcend these emotions, these feelings, or this lack of control, or whatever is getting on my way. Probably my negative language, or probably I'm carrying a lot of baggage from the past. And that is just keeping me from getting where I want to go. And for a lot of people, it's simply, I don't think there is much that mentality can do for me right now, because it's not something tangible, because it's not something they can touch, because it's not something they can see, it's not something that they can grab in their hand. It's not that shiny thing in their hand that looks attractive at night and say, this is gonna change you. This is gonna do something for you. That's why many people that want to change their body, okay, I want to do a diet, and they need that CD in their hand, or they need that MP3 player, you know, or they need that book that gives them the idea that, okay, this is something that can make it happen. But when there isn't really that you can have, that you can hold in your hand, when there isn't really something that you can see, we resist many times, because we just think like, well, it's amazing that we go so much against our own beliefs, because yes, we deep inside we know and we accept that there is people that have created exceptional things in the world, just changing their mindset. And we know that the professionals athletes do it, the Olympians do it, Navy SEALs do it, people that play football, people that play tennis, billionaires, businessmen, in every field in the world there is super extraordinarily successful people that say you got to work with your mind. It's not enough to change. It's not enough to work your talents. It's not enough to work your skills, your body. If your mind is not in the right place, it just doesn't gonna happen. If the mind is not in the right place, it just won't happen. And we accept that. But when we're told, hey, how about why don't you pay a little more attention to yourself, a little more self conscious, more aware of how you're thinking, how you're talking to yourself, how are you moving, how you see yourself, how is your self language, and all that. And we say, oh no, that is just crazy spiritual things, like the out there stuff that it does not gonna help me, and we just toss it to the side. That's what should make you think. Just that's the main reason why I I always emphasize and say you gotta be mindful of yourself. You got to learn to step out of your body and look at yourself, the way you behave, the way you think about yourself, the way you talk to yourself, what you believe, what you feel when you desire something, what you feel when you want to set up goals. How are your emotions when you see something that other people are successful in just for a fraction of a second in the back of your mind you say, I wish I could do that. I maybe could. How about me being bold enough and daring to think that I can do it? Boom, then you go back to reality, and your self language is, oh my God, really? Seriously? Look at yourself. Look where you're standing right now. Look what you achieved. Look where you live. Look at your car. Look at your friends. Look at the way you move. Look at the way you dress. Look at the way you look, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you show yourself the world. Really? Look at your age and where you're standing or where you're living. I mean, and we give up in a fraction of a second. We give up. We don't mind. We don't mind giving it so little importance to a moment could that could change things, could turn things around completely in your life. We don't mind giving up to that. I mean, that's being so. I mean, being so important. Getting to the point where you say, you know what, that's true. How about I dare to dream just a little bit? There might be a chance. Just a little chance. Let's see if it's there. And many times we dismiss these little opportunities that we have every day to grow a little more mentally, and we let them go just because we're not paying attention to ourselves. You're not paying attention to the way you're behaving. You're not paying attention to the way you're thinking. And that's simply, I mean, just talking in one word, that's being mindful. But people nowadays, a lot of people, oh, mindfulness, oh, that crazy stuff, whatever. Just a marketing thing to sell books and stuff. You don't have to buy any books. You don't have to buy nothing. You don't have to spend one penny just just to really get to know what that means and grow. You can go to the internet. You have the power of knowing everything you need to know about it, in your hand. You have the biggest and the best library right in your hand to know everything you need to know about meditation, about mindfulness, about yoga, and all the mental resourceful tools that can help you. And if you don't like, you try it and you don't like it, okay, give up. Go back to being who you were. But you don't even have to spend money on that kind of stuff. So pay attention. Don't be the kind of people that just dismisses whatever it is that you know, that when you hear something that, okay, how about you paying attention? When people say, you know what, mentality or something like that, when you hear that, don't block it from your mind. Just imagine that all they're saying is pay attention to what's between your ears. Just pay attention to how you're talking to yourself. Just pay attention to what you have done about yourself in the last 30 days or 30 years. Are you the same person that still gets pissed off about the same thing that you were, you know, that, from 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Are you still the same person that loses it when you hear something about this? Like you've been doing it for 10, 20 years? Are you still you still feel the same way about that ex that hurt you 20 years ago? You still feel the same about that person that hurt you 7 years ago? I mean, bottling up all those feelings and emotions and all that stuff is just that just tells you that you have not been growing. You might be a different person. You might be on your 20s now, or your 30s, or your 60s, or your 80s. But obviously, as a person, you're not growing up. You're not, if you haven't shifted anything in your mind, if you haven't changed nothing in your actions, if you're still not bold enough to do that thing that you couldn't do 20 years ago, and still today you're not daring enough to do it, then you have not grown in that aspect. It's just as simple as that. This doesn't require you to spend any money, and this doesn't require you to go to a 1 week retreat or spend money to go to pay a visit to the Tibetan monks. You can do this very well while you're driving in your car. You can do this very well while you're going to sleep, taking 5 minutes before you go to sleep and just thinking about it. You can do it even when you're in line buying your coffee, taking a couple of minutes and saying, God, look how ridiculous that person looks with that. And that's when you catch yourself and say, why, let it go. Why do you have to react like that? I mean, do you really think that that kind of reactions help you? No, they don't. They don't. It's just that's exactly mindfulness, catching yourself doing those kind of things. When you hear being self-aware, when you hear about mindful, when you're being self-conscious, all you gotta visualize is you stepping out of your body and looking at your behavior and you looking at your emotions. That's what it is. Is that the person looking outside your and saying, is the way I see this guy behaving, the way I see this guy reacting to emotions, the guy to see this guy's emotional matureness, the way I see this guy, how he carries himself in front of other people, or how he carries himself when nobody's watching. Is that the person? If that person had to take care of my kids, would I trust him? Would I date that person? Will I marry that person? Would I trust that person with my kids? Would I want to be the friend? Would I want to befriend that person? That's all it takes. That's all it takes. And it can happen in 1 minute, it can happen in 30 seconds, or it can happen in 3 hours. But those are little things that all you gotta do is just be self-aware. And that could be the key that unleashes a completely different person in you.